we've hit a critical inflection point in global technology. For decades, we've all operated on a pretty simple assumption that the advanced components powering our entire digital world would always be there. Well, that assumption is now dangerously fragile. In fact, it's resting on a single point of failure. Today, we're going to break down this vulnerability and explore what a real strategy for resilience has to look like. Because when the stakes are this high, hope is not a plan.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll define that single point of failure that underpins this whole crisis. Then, we'll look at the shifting strategic balance with China. From there, we'll dive into the gap between America's aspirations and its on-the-ground execution. After that, we'll outline a credible path forward before wrapping up with the immense stakes of inaction.
All right, so to really get a handle on this risk, you have to appreciate the sheer scale of it. The global economy has become dependent on a concentration of manufacturing power that is, frankly, unlike anything we've seen in modern history. Let's start with the one number that says it all: 90%. Just let that sink in for a moment. 90% of the world's most sophisticated, most powerful microchips are made in one place by one company, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, better known as TSMC. You know, this isn't just a large market share. It's a near total monopoly on the foundational technology of our time. And that right there transforms what might seem like a simple supply chain concern into a critical geopolitical risk. The stability of our entire digital world, everything, now hinges on the stability of a single, highly contested island. And let's be really clear about what we're talking about here. These aren't your everyday commodity chips. We're talking about these sub-5 nanometer processors. These are the indispensable engines for the AI revolution, for our most advanced defense systems, for high-performance computing, really for the next generation of everything. So the big question is, what happens if that supply gets disrupted, whether it's by conflict, a blockade, or even a natural disaster? Well, the consequences would be immediate and absolutely catastrophic. Technology supply chains worldwide would just seize up. We would see crippling supply shocks and price spikes across literally every industry. Innovation itself would grind to a halt, and America's technological leadership would be severely damaged. Now, this massive vulnerability, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. And that brings us to China's strategic countermoves, which are fundamentally changing the technological power balance and, frankly, turning up the heat on the entire situation. One of the biggest signals of this shift was Beijing's recent ban on certain domestic firms buying chips from the American giant NVIDIA. Now, this was not just some trade spat. It was a declaration of confidence. It was a signal that China believes its own domestic industry is getting strong enough to withstand and even retaliate against U.S. restrictions. And this has created a really dangerous competitive dynamic. For years, the U.S. strategy was pretty straightforward: use export controls to slow China down. In response, Beijing has been pouring billions upon billions into its domestic industry to achieve technological independence. This tit-for-tat escalation is pushing us toward two separate, decoupled tech ecosystems, which would be a deeply inefficient and unstable outcome for the whole world. So the new reality is this: the very tool Washington used to exert influence, those export controls, is now just highlighting the erosion of that influence. The entire strategic calculus has fundamentally changed. Okay, so acknowledging the problem is one thing. Actually solving it is a whole other story. Let's now take a hard look at the main U.S. response and expose the pretty significant gap between its ambitious goals and the challenging reality on the ground. The centerpiece of the U.S. strategy, as you know, has been the CHIPS Act, a massive $50 billion commitment to boost domestic semiconductor manufacturing. The aspiration is clear: bring advanced chip production back to American shores. But here's the thing: you can't just throw money at this problem and expect it to go away. The execution has been bogged down by immense challenges. We're talking about a maze of regulations, a critical shortage of skilled labor, and major bottlenecks for specialized equipment. We're already seeing the fallout at TSMC's flagship plant in Arizona, which is facing significant delays and cost overruns. And what all this really demonstrates is that good intentions and a ton of capital, they're just not enough. Building an advanced semiconductor ecosystem is one of the most complex industrial undertakings in human history. Without an execution plan that truly matches the ambitious rhetoric, this massive investment is going to fall short. So, if the current approach is struggling, what does a credible strategy for semiconductor resilience actually look like? Let's pivot from analyzing the problem to outlining a concrete, multi-pronged blueprint for a much more secure future. A truly robust strategy has to rest on four distinct pillars. First is talent. We have to make training engineers and scientists a national priority. Second, diversification, building redundancy by speeding up fab construction, not just in the US, but with key allies like Japan, South Korea, and Europe. Third, allied coordination, harmonizing our policies and co-investing to share the costs and strengthen our collective resilience. And fourth, asymmetric investment. Instead of just playing catch-up, we have to invest to leapfrog to the next generation of technologies like quantum and neuromorphic computing. Now, this whole strategy is obviously operating within a competitive framework with China. And that raises a fundamental question. Can this escalating rivalry be managed, or is some level of cooperation still on the table? The sober, realistic assessment is that it's highly unlikely. Look, while some minor coordination might be possible here and there, the fundamental trust you'd need for deep cooperation on a technology this critical, it's just gone. The competition is here to stay, and the US and its allies have to plan for a future where the global tech ecosystem might be permanently fractured. So let's bring this all home and really reinforce why this issue demands our full attention. The stakes of getting this wrong are immense, and they touch every single aspect of our economy, our security, and our future. Let's be absolutely clear about what's at stake here. Semiconductors are not just another industry. They are the foundational layer for all modern economic growth. They're the absolute key to national competitiveness, and they're the bedrock of modern military readiness, period. And this brings us right back to our central theme. Hoping that the situation in Taiwan stays peaceful, or hoping that our competitors will stumble, well, it provides a false sense of security. Comfort is not a strategy. Real security can only be built through disciplined strategy, sustained investment, and relentless execution. And this leaves us with one final critical question. The challenges of building true technological resilience are, without a doubt, enormous. But we have to ask ourselves, is the cost of acting truly greater than the catastrophic risk of doing nothing?